The most dangerous mistake an officer can make is believing a person's worth can be measured before hearing their story. Blue and red lights flashed across the rain-soaked highway as Officer Ryan Walker guided a black sport utility vehicle onto the shoulder just outside the city limits. The steady rhythm of passing traffic blended with the soft crackle of his shoulder radio, while water shimmered beneath the glow of nearby streetlights. Ryan stepped confidently from his patrol car, adjusting his uniform as he approached the driver's window with the practiced certainty of someone who believed every situation could be judged within the first few seconds. Inside the vehicle, Monica Hayes lowered the window with calm, deliberate movements. She was a black woman in her mid-40s wearing a simple navy blazer after what appeared to have been a long day at work. Her hands rested comfortably on the steering wheel exactly where they could be seen, and her expression remained composed despite the unexpected stop. Ryan barely looked at her before speaking. "Good evening, ma'am. License, registration, and proof of insurance." Monica nodded politely without hesitation. "Of course, officer." She reached slowly toward the center console, retrieved the requested documents, and handed them over with steady hands. Ryan glanced at the paperwork before shifting his attention back to her. "Do you know why I stopped you?" Monica answered honestly. "No, officer. I believed I was driving within the speed limit." Ryan looked toward the dashboard, then back at her again. "We will discuss that in a moment." His tone remained firm but noticeably colder than necessary. He studied her vehicle with unusual attention, allowing several long seconds of silence to pass before asking another question. "Where are you coming from this evening?" Monica smiled politely. "A meeting downtown." "What kind of meeting?" Ryan asked. "A professional meeting." Her answer was respectful but brief. Ryan frowned slightly as though the response somehow disappointed him. Behind them, another patrol unit drove past before continuing down the highway, leaving only the sound of rainfall tapping softly against the pavement. A pickup truck slowed as it passed, its driver glancing toward the flashing emergency lights before disappearing into the darkness. Ryan continued examining the documents in his hand much longer than necessary. "This vehicle is registered to your name?" he asked. "Yes." "And you are the primary driver?" "Yes." "How long have you owned it?" Monica answered every question with the same quiet patience, never raising her voice or showing irritation. Her calmness seemed to unsettle Ryan more than disagreement would have. He walked back toward his patrol car to verify her information, but something inside him urged him to keep looking for a reason that justified extending the stop. Minutes passed before he returned once again. "Would you mind stepping out of the vehicle for a moment?" Monica looked at him steadily before unfastening her seat belt. "If that is your instruction, officer, I will cooperate." She stepped onto the wet shoulder as the cool evening breeze carried the scent of fresh rain through the air. The flashing lights reflected across the pavement while passing drivers briefly turned their heads toward the unusual scene. Monica stood quietly beside her vehicle with complete dignity, showing neither fear nor frustration. After another moment of silence, she looked directly at Ryan and spoke in the same calm voice she had used since the beginning of the stop. "Officer, I sincerely hope every driver you meet tonight receives the same level of attention and respect." Ryan said nothing. He believed he remained completely in control of the situation. What he did not know was that by sunrise the following morning, every decision he made during those quiet minutes on the side of the highway would be remembered for a reason he could never have imagined. 2 hours earlier, before flashing lights illuminated the highway and before either of them realized their paths were about to cross, the city moved through another ordinary evening beneath heavy clouds and the promise of rain. Monica Hayes stepped out of City Hall carrying nothing more than a slim leather portfolio and a small travel mug that had long since gone cold. The final meeting of the day had lasted longer than expected, yet there was no sign of frustration on her face. She thanked the security officer at the entrance by name, wished the receptionist a pleasant evening, and paused briefly to hold the glass door open for a maintenance employee pushing a supply cart inside. "Thank you," the employee said with a grateful smile. Monica simply replied, "We all help each other." She walked across the parking lot, unlocked her black sport utility vehicle, and quietly pulled onto the boulevard leading toward the interstate. Soft jazz played at a low volume through the speakers while rain began falling in gentle drops across the windshield. Several miles away, Officer Ryan Walker was finishing paperwork inside the patrol station before beginning the final hours of his evening shift. His training record was impressive. His supervisors praised his confidence. His fellow officers admired how quickly he made decisions. Ryan believed hesitation created weakness, and he had built a reputation for acting first and questioning later. Before leaving the station, another officer joked, "Looks like everyone is driving carefully tonight." Ryan smiled as he clipped his radio into place. "Someone always gives me a reason to stay busy." Minutes later, his patrol vehicle rolled onto the interstate where traffic flowed steadily despite the worsening weather. Rain reflected the glow of headlights into long silver ribbons stretching across the pavement. Drivers reduced their speed while windshield wipers moved in steady rhythm against the glass. Ryan watched every passing vehicle with practiced concentration, convinced experience had taught him how to recognize trouble before it revealed itself. At the same time, Monica maintained a safe speed in the center lane, leaving generous distance between herself and the vehicles ahead. She spoke briefly through her hands-free system to confirm an early morning appointment before ending the call and returning her complete attention to the road. Her driving remained smooth and predictable as she signaled each lane change well in advance. Several exits passed beneath the steady rainfall before Ryan noticed her vehicle merging ahead of him. Nothing about the maneuver violated traffic laws, yet something caught his attention. He followed at a distance for nearly a mile, watching carefully as though waiting for a mistake that never came. Even after confirming her speed matched the posted limit, he continued behind her, studying every movement with increasing certainty that something justified another look. Monica noticed the patrol car in her rearview mirror but remained focused on driving. She had spent enough years in public service to understand that calm decisions often prevented unnecessary tension. She adjusted her mirrors, maintained her lane, and continued toward the city limits without changing her pace. Then the patrol car accelerated slightly. Blue and red emergency lights suddenly burst through the rain, painting the wet highway in shifting reflections that reached far beyond the shoulder. Monica glanced into the mirror, activated her turn signal immediately, and guided her vehicle safely onto the side of the road. She took one slow breath before placing both hands gently on the steering wheel, never imagining that the quiet traffic stop unfolding outside her window would become the first chapter of a lesson an entire police department would never forget. Rain continued falling in a steady rhythm, as the flashing patrol lights reflected across the wet pavement like waves of blue and red stretching into the darkness. Monica Hayes remained beside her vehicle with complete composure, her hands visible and her posture relaxed despite the growing curiosity of passing motorists slowing briefly before continuing down the interstate. Officer Ryan Walker walked another slow circle around the sport utility vehicle, carefully studying every detail as though searching for an explanation that justified the extra attention he had already devoted to an otherwise ordinary traffic stop. He paused near the rear of the vehicle before returning to Monica with her documents still in his hand. "You said you attended a professional meeting," he began. "What organization was hosting it?" Monica answered with the same calm tone she had maintained from the beginning. "A city meeting." Ryan tilted his head slightly. "What kind of city meeting?" Monica smiled politely without showing the slightest impatience. "One involving public service." Ryan expected a longer explanation. Instead, her measured responses left him with more questions than answers. He glanced once more toward the vehicle before speaking again. "Do you travel this route often?" "Whenever my schedule requires it," Monica replied. "And tonight required it?" "Yes, officer." Several moments of silence followed. Rain tapped softly against the roof of the vehicle while distant headlights passed like quiet streaks of light beyond the shoulder. Ryan believed experience had taught him to recognize when someone was hiding something, yet Monica displayed none of the nervous habits he usually expected to see. Her breathing remained steady. Her eye contact remained respectful. Her answers never changed in tone. The only thing that seemed unusual to him was how completely at ease she appeared. He returned to his patrol car once more and reviewed her information again through the onboard computer. Every record matched perfectly. Her driver's license was valid. The registration was current. There were no outstanding citations, no alerts, and no concerns requiring additional action. Everything before him suggested the stop should already have ended. Yet something inside Ryan urged him to continue asking questions. He stepped back into the rain and approached Monica once more. "Do you work for the city?" he asked. Monica paused for only a heartbeat before answering. "Yes." Ryan nodded slowly. "Which department?" Monica looked toward the highway for a brief moment before meeting his eyes again. "You will probably know soon enough." The answer caught him completely off guard. It was neither defiant nor sarcastic. It sounded almost thoughtful, as though she had simply stated an unavoidable fact. Ryan frowned slightly but said nothing. A state transportation truck rolled past, spraying a fine mist into the air before disappearing into the darkness. The highway grew quiet again. Monica adjusted the sleeve of her navy blazer against the cool evening breeze and waited patiently without asking when she would be allowed to continue home. Her restraint contrasted sharply with the frustration many drivers displayed during far shorter traffic stops. Ryan finally handed her documents back. "You are free to leave." Monica accepted them with a courteous nod. "Thank you, officer. I hope the rest of your evening is safe." She entered her vehicle, fastened her seatbelt, and carefully merged back onto the interstate without accelerating beyond the posted speed limit. Ryan watched the taillights disappear into the rain until they became two distant red dots fading into the night. He could not explain why the encounter continued to occupy his thoughts. There had been no argument, no violation, and no dramatic confrontation. Yet something about the quiet confidence of the woman he had just delayed lingered with him as he returned to his patrol car, completely unaware that by sunrise he would discover exactly why her final words had sounded less like a prediction and more like a certainty. Morning sunlight poured through the tall windows of the police headquarters, replacing the previous night's rain with a calm blue sky that gave no hint of how dramatically the day would unfold. Officers arrived earlier than usual, adjusting their uniforms, exchanging greetings, and preparing for the official welcome ceremony honoring the department's newly appointed chief of police. Fresh flowers decorated the front lobby, the department flag stood proudly beside the briefing podium, and rows of polished chairs filled the assembly room where every available seat would soon be occupied. Officer Ryan Walker walked confidently through the hallway carrying a cup of coffee, greeting fellow officers with the relaxed assurance that had always defined his reputation. Several conversations centered around the same question. "Who do you think the new chief will be?" one officer asked. Another shrugged. "Probably someone transferred from a larger department." Ryan smiled as he joined the discussion. "Whoever it is, I just hope they believe in proactive policing." His comment drew a few quiet nods before everyone moved toward the briefing room. Across town, Monica Hayes prepared for the same morning in an entirely different setting. Inside a quiet office overlooking the city skyline, a neatly pressed navy business suit rested beside a leather portfolio embossed with the city's official seal. Monica placed the portfolio on the desk before taking one final look through the large window toward the streets below. She did not think about the traffic stop from the previous evening with anger. Instead, she reflected on the responsibility waiting ahead. Leadership, she believed, began long before policies were written or speeches were delivered. It began with understanding the everyday experiences of the people who lived and worked throughout the community. A gentle knock sounded at the office door. The city manager entered carrying a sealed appointment folder. "Everything is ready," he said warmly. Monica accepted the folder with a grateful smile. "Thank you. The mayor and police commission are already waiting." She nodded calmly before following him toward the conference hall. Meanwhile, inside police headquarters, officers filled the briefing room as conversations slowly faded into anticipation. Ryan found a seat near the front beside several patrol supervisors. He glanced toward the entrance each time the doors opened, expecting a seasoned commander from another jurisdiction to walk inside at any moment. Daniel Foster, a younger officer seated nearby, quietly reviewed the ceremony agenda before whispering, "Strange that nobody has seen the new chief yet." Ryan shrugged confidently. "We will know soon enough." The captain stepped to the podium and welcomed everyone before introducing the mayor, members of the police commission, and city officials gathered along the front of the room. The mayor thanked every officer for serving the community before speaking about the department's future. He described the careful national search, the importance of integrity, and the need for leadership built upon trust instead of authority alone. Every officer listened attentively as the room settled into complete silence. Then the mayor smiled toward the entrance. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "it is my honor to introduce the next chief of police for our city." The heavy wooden doors slowly opened. Every head turned toward the hallway. Ryan lifted his coffee cup without a second thought, still completely certain he had never met the person about to enter. A pair of polished shoes appeared first, followed by a familiar navy blazer, and within a single heartbeat the quiet traffic stop from the previous evening returned to Ryan's memory with breathtaking clarity as Monica Hayes calmly stepped across the threshold, carrying herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had never needed a title to demonstrate true authority. For several long seconds, the briefing room remained completely silent. Even the quiet hum of the overhead lights seemed louder than the stunned disbelief spreading across the faces of every officer in attendance. Ryan Walker slowly lowered his coffee cup, unable to look away as Monica Hayes walked confidently toward the front of the room beside the mayor and members of the police commission. She acknowledged the assembled officers with a warm, professional smile, showing no trace of resentment from the previous evening. Her calm expression remained exactly the same as it had been beside the rain-covered highway. The mayor stepped forward and welcomed her before saying, "After an extensive nationwide search, our city selected a leader with exceptional experience, unquestionable integrity, and a lifelong commitment to public service. Please welcome your new chief of police, Monica Hayes." Applause gradually filled the room, beginning with city officials before spreading through the ranks of the department. Ryan joined the applause automatically, but every movement felt strangely distant. His thoughts remained fixed on the traffic stop, replaying each question he had asked, every unnecessary delay, and the quiet dignity Monica had maintained from beginning to end. She stepped behind the podium and waited patiently until the applause faded into silence. "Thank you," she began. "It is an honor to serve this department and the community we have all promised to protect." Her voice was calm, steady, and confident without ever becoming dramatic. "Every person in this building carries an important responsibility. Whether you wear a badge, answer emergency calls, maintain equipment, prepare reports, or support operations behind the scenes, every role contributes to public trust." Several civilian employees seated along the back wall smiled as she acknowledged them first. Monica continued, "Public confidence is built one conversation at a time. Long before a difficult case reaches a courtroom, trust begins during ordinary encounters between officers and the people they serve." Ryan felt those words settle heavily in his mind. Although Monica never looked directly toward him, each sentence reminded him of the quiet roadside conversation that had ended only hours earlier. She continued speaking with the same thoughtful rhythm. Every traffic stop, every neighborhood conversation, every request for assistance becomes an opportunity to demonstrate professionalism. The people we meet may never remember every detail of what we say, but they will always remember how we made them feel. The room remained completely still. No one interrupted. No one whispered. Monica paused briefly before offering a gentle smile. "Yesterday evening reminded me of something I learned many years ago. Respect should never depend upon appearance, occupation, neighborhood, or assumptions. Professionalism begins before we know anything about the person standing in front of us." Ryan looked down at the polished floor, recognizing the quiet truth hidden within those words. She had not mentioned his name. She had not described the traffic stop. She had not embarrassed anyone publicly. Instead, she had transformed a personal experience into a lesson for the entire department without assigning blame. The speech continued with practical plans for improved communication training, community partnerships, and leadership development. Every initiative focused on strengthening trust, rather than increasing authority. As Monica concluded, she looked across the room with genuine optimism. "Every new day offers us another opportunity to become the department our community deserves. I believe every person here is capable of that standard." Applause filled the room once again, stronger than before. Officers rose from their seats while city officials congratulated the new chief. Ryan remained standing among them, but inside he understood that the most important promotion announced that morning was not Monica's appointment. It was the quiet invitation she had extended to every officer in the room, including him, to become a better version of themselves beginning with the very next person they encountered. After the ceremony concluded, The energy inside the department felt noticeably different. Officers gathered in small groups throughout the hallways, speaking more quietly than usual as they reflected on everything they had witnessed that morning. The excitement surrounding the arrival of the new chief had gradually been replaced by thoughtful silence. Ryan Walker remained near the back of the briefing room long after most of his colleagues had returned to their assignments. The applause had faded, the city officials had departed, and maintenance staff quietly began arranging chairs back into their usual positions, yet Ryan still found himself standing in the same place where his assumptions had quietly unraveled. He replayed every moment from the previous evening with increasing clarity. Monica Hayes had answered every question respectfully. She had followed every instruction without hesitation. She had shown patience when many drivers would have become frustrated. Most of all, she had treated him with professionalism despite receiving far less in return. Across the hallway, Monica met briefly with division commanders before inviting every supervisor into a smaller conference room for her first leadership meeting. There were no dramatic announcements waiting on the agenda, no sweeping policy changes prepared for immediate implementation, and no criticism directed toward any individual officer. Instead, Monica stood beside a whiteboard with a single sentence written across the top in clear black letters. Respect creates trust. She welcomed everyone with the same calm smile before speaking. Our department already has talented officers, she said. My responsibility is to help us become a department that earns confidence not only through successful investigations, but also through every ordinary interaction with the people we serve. The room remained completely attentive. Monica continued walking slowly around the conference table, instead of remaining behind the podium. A traffic stop may last only 10 minutes, but the memory of that encounter can shape public trust for years. A conversation inside a neighborhood can influence how an entire family views law enforcement. Small moments become lasting impressions. Ryan listened carefully from the far end of the table. Every example felt deeply personal, yet Monica never referred to the previous evening. She never mentioned the highway, the rain, or the unnecessary questions. She simply described the responsibility every officer carried each time they approached another person. Beginning this week, she continued, we will strengthen communication training, review our traffic stop procedures, and encourage officers to think beyond enforcement alone. Professionalism is not demonstrated only when situations become difficult. It begins the moment we introduce ourselves. Several supervisors nodded in agreement while taking notes. One lieutenant raised his hand and asked, Chief, are these changes a response to a specific incident? Monica paused thoughtfully before answering. No single incident defines an organization. Culture is shaped by thousands of ordinary decisions made every day. That is where meaningful improvement begins. The answer settled quietly over the room. Nobody asked another question. As the meeting concluded, officers gathered their folders and prepared to leave. Ryan remained seated for a few extra moments, watching Monica organize her notes with the same quiet confidence she had displayed since entering the building. He considered walking over to apologize immediately, but the words refused to come. Every sentence he rehearsed sounded incomplete. Monica looked up briefly, smiled politely, and wished everyone a productive day before continuing toward her office. Ryan watched her disappear down the hallway, realizing that genuine accountability could not begin with carefully chosen words alone. It would have to be demonstrated through every decision he made from that moment forward, because the greatest lesson he had learned was not delivered through discipline or embarrassment. It had been taught by the quiet example of someone who understood that true authority never needed to announce itself to earn respect. The weeks that followed brought quiet changes that no policy manual alone could have created. Patrol cars still rolled out before sunrise, dispatch radios still carried urgent calls across the city, and officers still answered every shift with the same commitment to protecting their community. Yet something inside the department had begun to evolve. Chief Monica Hayes rarely remained inside her office for long. Instead, she spent her mornings walking through every division, greeting dispatchers by name, thanking evidence technicians for their precision, speaking with records clerks about improving communication, and listening carefully to maintenance employees who often noticed problems before anyone else did. Her presence never felt intimidating. It felt reassuring. She believed leadership became visible only when people felt comfortable telling the truth. Ryan Walker noticed those small moments every day. He watched Monica stop to thank a receptionist for helping a confused visitor. He watched her hold open a door for a volunteer carrying heavy boxes. He watched her patiently answer questions from a rookie officer who clearly expected only a brief response. Every interaction looked effortless because every interaction reflected the same values she had described during her first speech. There were no exceptions based on rank, position, or appearance. One afternoon, Ryan responded to a routine call involving a driver who had accidentally entered a restricted parking area near a community center. As he approached the vehicle, the memory of the rainy highway returned to him with remarkable clarity. He slowed his pace, greeted the driver politely, introduced himself, explained the situation calmly, and listened before asking additional questions. Within minutes, the misunderstanding was resolved with courtesy instead of tension. The driver thanked him sincerely before leaving with a smile. Ryan stood beside his patrol car for a moment, realizing how differently the encounter had unfolded simply because he had chosen patience before assumption. Later that evening, Daniel Foster found Ryan completing paperwork inside the station. "You handled that call differently today," Daniel observed. Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "I finally realized that professionalism is not measured by how much authority we have. It is measured by how responsibly we use it." Daniel smiled. "Sounds like someone has been paying attention." Ryan quietly laughed for the first time in several days. "I should have learned that lesson a long time ago." Across the building, Monica reviewed anonymous feedback collected from both department employees and community members following the first month of her leadership initiative. Many comments praised improved communication during traffic stops, friendlier interactions at the front desk, and greater cooperation between officers and civilian staff. None of the reports celebrated dramatic reforms or headline-making achievements. Instead, they described ordinary conversations that left people feeling respected. Monica closed the folder with quiet satisfaction. Meaningful progress often appeared first in the smallest details. As the workday ended, Ryan walked past Monica's office and noticed the door standing open. She was organizing community outreach schedules for the following month. He paused briefly before knocking gently against the door frame. Monica looked up and welcomed him with the same calm smile she offered everyone. Ryan hesitated for only a second before speaking. "Chief, I wanted to thank you." Monica tilted her head slightly. "For what, officer?" Ryan answered honestly. "For reminding me that every person I meet deserves the same respect before I know anything about them." Monica nodded thoughtfully. "Then promise me one thing." "Anything." "Make certain the officers who learn from you someday never have to learn that lesson the difficult way." Ryan accepted her words with quiet gratitude. As he stepped back into the hallway, he understood that true leadership had already begun changing the department, not because people feared the chief, but because they wanted to become the kind of professionals her example encouraged them to be every single day. Nearly 2 months passed, and the transformation inside the department became visible not only to the officers who worked there but also to the people they served every day. Community meetings that had once drawn only a handful of residents now filled with neighborhood leaders, local business owners, teachers, parents, and volunteers eager to speak openly with law enforcement. Conversations that previously centered on complaints gradually shifted toward collaboration. Chief Monica Hayes attended every meeting with the same quiet confidence that had defined her first day in office. She listened carefully before offering solutions, encouraged officers to hear concerns without becoming defensive, and reminded everyone that trust could never be demanded. It had to be earned through consistent actions repeated day after day. Officer Ryan Walker volunteered to participate in many of those community events. At first, he simply wanted to support the department's new direction, but over time he discovered something unexpected. The more patiently he listened to people, the easier it became to solve problems before they grew into larger conflicts. Parents thanked him for explaining safety programs to their children. Senior citizens appreciated the extra time he spent answering questions instead of rushing through conversations. Local business owners began greeting him by name when he walked through their neighborhoods. None of those moments appeared in official reports, yet they quietly strengthened the relationship between the department and the community more than any public relations campaign ever could. One afternoon, Ryan responded to another routine traffic stop involving an elderly driver who appeared confused after missing a detour around road construction. Months earlier, he might have approached the situation with impatience, focused only on enforcing the rules. Instead, he introduced himself politely, explained the temporary traffic pattern, answered every question with respect, and made certain the driver understood the safest route before continuing the trip. As the vehicle slowly pulled away, the elderly man smiled through the open window and said, "Thank you for treating me with kindness." Ryan stood beside his patrol car watching the afternoon traffic flow past, realizing those simple words meant more than any compliment he had received during his career. Later that week, Monica invited officers, civilian employees, dispatchers, maintenance staff, and community representatives to a roundtable discussion inside the department's training center. Every chair surrounded the same large table. No seating arrangement reflected rank or title. Monica looked around the room before speaking. When people feel respected, they become willing to work together. That is how safer communities are built. One by one, participants shared stories describing positive encounters